So you already had seen that you can use Laplace transforms to solve for the transfer function and the impulse response of systems. So the way in which you use the Fourier transforms to compute the frequency response as well as the impulse response is exactly the same. So we will start by looking at a very simple problem initially, which is this differential equation. So we can consider that you have a system which is described by the first order differential equation as follows. So you have dy by dt plus 2y of t is equal to x of t plus dxt by dt. Now you are asked to find out the impulse response of the system. Now you are asked to find out the impulse response using the Fourier transform. So first of all, we will try to simplify this using Fourier transforms, and then we will do a comparison with the method of simplification by using Laplace transforms. So we will be using the representation x of omega to represent the Fourier transform of x of t. So I have used a capital omega to refer to a continuous frequency and small omega to represent the discrete frequency, which we'll be seeing in the next two modules. So capital omega, as noted here, will refer to a continuous frequency. So earlier I had represented the frequency domain, that's the Fourier transform of x of t as x of j omega. The spectrum was represented as x of j omega. So for ease of notation, I have dropped that j symbol. So and I will represent the Fourier transform of x of t as just x of omega. So now we will take the Fourier transform throughout for this first order differential equation. So if you take the Fourier transform throughout, Fourier transform of y dash t is j omega into y of omega plus 2y of omega is equal to x of omega plus j omega into x of omega. So which will give you, if you group the terms containing y of omega and x of omega separately, then you can write y of omega by x of omega, which is equal to h of omega. So h of omega is equal to, therefore, h of omega is equal to 1 plus j omega by 2 plus j omega. So you have an improper rational function as discussed earlier for the case of Laplace transforms, which means that the order of the numerator as well as the order of the denominator is the same. Order refers to the power of omega, where order refers to the power of omega. So earlier we had represented this in terms of the transfer function, which is h of s. Now we are talking about a frequency response, which we will call as h of omega. H of omega is equal to 1 plus j omega by 2 plus j omega, which you can write as 1 minus 1 by 2 plus j omega. And if you take the inverse Fourier transform of 1 would be delta t, and inverse Fourier transform of 1 by 2 plus j omega is equal to e raised to minus t minus 2t into u of t. So the impulse response is therefore delta t minus e raised to minus 2t into u of t. Is that clear? So now we see that this procedure is identical to, solving using Laplace transforms. So you could have replaced you could have just taken the Laplace transform of this equation, and then in the final expression you could have replaced s by j omega. So that would have converted h of s to h of omega. So in fact, it's very similar to the Laplace transform procedure. Whatever you had done for this question using Fourier transform, the same procedure is applicable for Laplace transform as well. So absolutely the amount of let's say complexity or amount of difficulty, if you can quantify the amount of difficulty, then the amount of difficulty for this question to be solved using Laplace transform and Fourier transform will be the same. So we will move on to another example, and then finally we will see that for all these problems you can use the Laplace transform approach and just replace s by j omega to find out the frequency response of the system, except for certain special cases which we will discuss. Now for the system given here dy t by dt plus 2y of t is equal to x of t, you are asked to find out the output y of t for x of t is equal to e raised to minus t into u of t. That's for part A. With the class name. X of t is equal to e raised to minus t into u of t for part A and x of t is equal to u of t part B. So if you take the Fourier transform through for this differential equation, you can write j omega into y of omega plus 2 into y of omega is equal to x of omega. So which will give you h of omega is equal to 1 by 2 plus j omega. H of omega is equal to 1 by 2 plus j omega. So which means you would have had an HFS given by 1 by 2 plus s. HFS would have been just 1 by 2 plus s. So it's inverse Fourier transform, or if you have taken the Laplace transform as 1 by 2 plus s, its inverse Laplace transform would have been e raised to minus 2t into u of t. Okay, so the impulse response is e raised to minus 2t into u of t. Now, for the first input, which is x of t is equal to e raised to minus t into u of t, you have x of omega is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega, which means we can write y of j omega is equal to x of omega into h of omega. So x of omega into h of omega will give you y of j omega, y of omega. So y of omega is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega into 2 plus j omega, which you partial factorize. So if you partial factorize, you will get this as equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega minus 1 by 2 plus j omega, which will imply that y of t is equal to e raised to minus t minus e raised to minus 2t into u of t. So that's how you simplify this question. So you see that the complexity for solving this problem using Laplace transform or using Fourier transform is exactly the same. So you could have done it using either Laplace transform or Fourier transform. So now we'll move on to the next question, and then also we'll evaluate the complexity. So if x of t was equal to u of t, x of t is equal to u of t, then it's x of omega is equal to pi delta omega plus 1 by j omega, right? So pi delta omega plus 1 by j omega, that is your x of omega. And now x of omega into h of omega. H of omega was 1 by 2 plus j omega. So 1 by 2 plus j omega. So x of omega into h of omega will give you y of omega. So therefore, y of omega is equal to, this is your x of omega multiplied by, this is h of omega. So I will expand this and write pi delta omega by 2 plus j omega plus 1 by j omega into 2 plus j omega. So this is the expression for y of omega. And now you are required to find out y of t. Now if you observe that pi delta omega by 2 plus j omega is equal to pi delta omega by 2. Why? Because you have a multiplication of this function by delta of omega. And you have this property of the impulse functions, which you call as the shifting property. So where you can write f of omega into delta of omega is equal to f of 0 into delta of omega. F of omega into delta omega is equal to f of 0 into delta of omega. So which means the impulse response is sampling f of impulse, sorry, the impulse function is sampling f of omega at omega equal to 0. Impulse function delta omega, which exists only at omega equal to 0, is sampling f of omega at f of omega at omega equal to 0. So this expression f of omega into delta of omega is actually equal to f of 0 into delta of omega. So that we had discussed in the first module when we discussed the shifting property of shifting or sampling property of the impulse function. Therefore, pi delta omega into 1 by 2 plus omega is just this function 1 by 2 plus j omega evaluated at omega equal to 0 into pi delta omega. So at omega equal to 0, this just reduces to 1 by 2. So y of omega is therefore pi delta omega by 2 plus 1 by j omega into 2 plus j omega, which you partial factorize. So that part I will not solve here. And now I can group pi delta omega plus 1 by j omega and take 1 by 2 outside and minus 1 by 2 into 1 by 2 plus omega. So this will yield y of t is equal to 1 by 2 into u of t minus 1 by 2 into u of e raised to minus 2t into u of t. So now you see that this problem is somewhat cumbersome. Why? Because for the impulse response you had this function. Sorry, for the input x of t you had this function u of t, and x of t has a Fourier transform given by pi delta omega plus 1 by j omega, whereas its Laplace transform was just 1 by s. Laplace transform of u of t is just 1 by s, whereas the Fourier transform of u of t is pi delta omega plus 1 by j omega. So now this will complicate matters. So therefore, you will need to do all these additional computations using Fourier transforms. So if you are given a choice, it's better to solve this problem using Laplace transform, because Laplace transform would mean that this is simplified much faster. Okay, so Laplace transform solution using Laplace transform would be 1 by, so this would have been just 1 by s. So x of s would have been just 1 by s, and the system function would have been 1 by 2 plus s, 1 by s plus 2. So y of s would have been 1 by s plus 2 into s. So you only needed to partial factorize that. So the problem would have been much easier if you had attempted to solve using Laplace transform. So in general, if you are given a choice to opt between Laplace transforms and Fourier transforms to solve differential equations and to find the system function, and from which we can find the frequency response, and from that, either from the system function or from the frequency response, you can find the impulse response. So given a choice, it's better to simplify that using Laplace transforms. So given a choice, simplify using Laplace transforms, right? In only very exceptional cases, you will need to use Fourier transforms. For example, if your impulse response h of t was equal to u of t, then if you are asked to find out the if you are asked to find out the impulse response or the frequency response, you see that the Laplace transform of u of t is equal to 1 by s, whereas the Fourier transform of u of t is equal to pi delta omega plus 1 by j omega. So in 1 by s, if you put s is equal to j omega, you are not going to get the Fourier transform of the unit step function. So for the unit step function as the impulse response, so if the impulse response is the unit step function, then you have to definitely compute using Fourier transform, right? I will repeat that again. If the impulse response of the system is a unit step function, if the impulse response of the system is a unit step function, then its frequency response is pi delta omega plus 1 by j omega. So which means there is a component at delta omega, that's omega equal to 0, with an area equal to pi. So pi delta omega will mean you have an impulse at omega equal to 0 with an area equal to pi. Whereas if you had taken the Laplace transform of u of t, then the Laplace transform of u of t would have been equal to 1 by s. Now if you substitute for s by j omega, you will only get 1 by j omega. So you will not get the frequency response of the impulse function. So you will not get the frequency response of the impulse function. So you will get the frequency response only when of the impulse of the unit step function only when you will get the frequency. Sorry, you will get the frequency response of a unit step function. That's frequency response of a unit step function, which means that if the impulse response, I meant to say that if the impulse response was a unit step function, then its frequency response is pi delta omega plus 1 by j omega, which you cannot get by using Laplace transform. You cannot substitute s is equal to j omega and find out what is the frequency response of a system which has got u of t as the impulse response, right? Okay, so now we will move on to the next question. So you have found out that for the previous case, the Laplace transform method is much easier. So wherever possible to solve differential equations, you have to use Laplace transform. I told you the expansion, the special case, the exception is only when you have as the impulse response a unit step function. When h of t is equal to u of t, you have to directly solve using Fourier transforms. Otherwise, you can always use Laplace transforms and put s is equal to j omega to convert the system function to the frequency response, right? So now we move on to the next question. E4B students should be remembering that we had discussed the case of an ideal 90-degree phase shifter. You would have discussed about this when you had seen the third method for single sideband generation, which you discussed in communication systems. SSB, for SSB, single sideband modulation, you have three methods. For single sideband modulation, you have the third method, which employs a 90-degree phase shifter for all the frequencies. So all the frequencies, all the baseband frequencies are shifted by 90 degrees. So you have an ideal 90-degree phase delayer. We will call this as an ideal minus pi by 2 radian phase shifter. So h of omega is equal to e raised to minus j pi by 2 for omega greater than 0, and e raised to plus j pi by 2 for omega less than 0. For omega greater than 0, it's equal to e raised to minus j pi by 2, and for omega less than 0, it's equal to e raised to j pi by 2. So this you call as a Hilbert transformer. This is very important. This you will be seeing in greater detail in the coming semesters. You will hear more about this when you discuss digital signal processing. You will hear about the Hilbert transformer when you talk about digital communications. So this is a very important system which we will call as a Hilbert transformer. So what the Hilbert transformer does is it shifts all the frequencies by 90 degrees. So the Hilbert transformer shifts all the frequencies by 90 degrees. So delays all the frequencies by 90 degrees. So therefore the phase response is minus pi by 2 radian for. See, listen here, all of you are requested to mute your mic. Please mute your mics. Sound again. So all the participants' mic have been muted by me except mine. So therefore you can discuss among yourselves. So this is a lecture. So as in a classroom, I will request total silence. So h of omega is equal to e raised to minus j pi by 2 radian for omega greater than 0, and h of omega is equal to e raised to plus j pi by 2 for omega less than 0. So this system you call as an Hilbert transform. So what this does is it delays all the frequencies by 90 degrees. So for omega greater than 0, the phase response is minus pi by 2 radian. So which means all the frequencies from 0 to infinity are delayed by 90 degrees, are delayed by pi by 2 radians. And you also need the phase response of a system to be anti-symmetry. So therefore h of omega is equal to e raised to j pi by 2 for omega less than 0. So as discussed earlier, we already have seen this kind of a system in the third method for SSB generation. The third method for SSB generation employs a 90-degree phase shifter. So this employs a 90-degree phase shifter for all the frequencies. So all the baseband signal frequencies or the modulating signal frequencies are delayed by 90 degree or delayed by 90 degree. So that is how you get the demodulated signal. So SSV generation and SSV regeneration, etc., demodulation, etc., you have seen, right? So the frequency response therefore can be written as e raised to j pi by 2 minus pi by 2 radian for omega less than greater than 0 and e raised to j pi by 2 radian for omega less than 0. So which means we can write h of omega is equal to minus j into signum of omega. Why? Because e raised to plus j pi by 2, e raised to plus j pi by 2 is just cos pi by 2 plus j sin pi by 2, which is equal to j. So for negative frequencies, it is equal to j. And for positive frequencies, it's equal to minus j. So h of omega is equal to minus j signum of omega. So minus j signum of omega. H of omega is equal to minus j signum of omega. Where signum of omega is the signum function, which is given by signum of omega is equal to 1 for omega greater than 0, and signum of omega is equal to minus 1 for omega less than 0. So this function is a special function which is called as the signum function. Okay. So signum of omega is equal to 1 for omega greater than 0, and signum of omega is equal to minus 1 for omega less than 0. So our frequency response h of omega is therefore equal to minus j signum of omega. Okay. Okay. So signum of omega is equal to minus 1 for omega greater than 0, and signum of omega is equal to 1 for omega greater than 0 and minus 1 for omega less than 0. So this result was previously derived, at least in the E4B class, this was previously derived. Signum of t has got a Fourier transform given by 2 by j omega. So you can apply duality theorem. So duality theorem states that if f of t has got a Fourier transform given by f of omega, then capital F of t has got a Fourier transform given by 2 pi f of minus omega. Okay. So therefore, you can write, you are required to find out the impulse response of the system. So h of omega is equal to minus j signum of omega, and therefore you will need to find out h of t as its inverse Fourier transform. So for that, you will apply the duality theorem. You know that sigma of t has got a Fourier transform given by 2 by j omega. So which means that duality states that 2 by jt can be Fourier transform to 2 pi signum of minus omega. Now signum of minus omega is just minus signum of omega. So that becomes minus 2 pi signum of omega. Or you have this result 1 by pi t as the inverse Fourier transform of minus j signum of omega. So that means that the impulse response of the Hilbert transformer is just equal to 1 by pi t. Okay. So impulse response of the Hilbert transformer is equal to 1 by pi t. Okay. So signum of omega is equal to impulse response of the Hilbert transformer is equal to 1 by pi t. Now, when the input was any arbitrary input x of t, the output would be x of t convolved with 1 by pi t, which is equal to 1 by pi integral minus infinity to plus infinity x of tau t minus tau d tau. So this is the convolution expression. X of t convolved with 1 by pi t is, I will take 1 by pi outside and write this as 1 by pi integral minus infinity to plus infinity x of tau t minus tau d tau. So therefore, you have this expression for the output as equal to y of t is equal to 1 by pi integral minus infinity to plus infinity x of tau by t minus 2 d tau. So now we call this expression as the Hilbert transform of x of t. So this is a very important expression. This is a very important transformation. So what this gives you is an output signal y of t, which is derived from the input signal x of t, when all the frequencies in x of t are delayed by 90 degrees. Is that understood? So like we did in the third method for SSB generation, in the third method for SSB generation, all the frequencies in the baseband signal, that's the modulating signal, was delayed by 90 degrees. So here, if you delay the frequencies, all frequencies of x of t by 90 degree, you will end up with this y of t, as y of t is equal to 1 by pi integral minus infinity to plus infinity x of tau by t minus tau dt. So this you call as the Hilbert transform of x of t. So now the Hilbert transform is something that is very special, because for all the transforms that we have seen, one is the Laplace transform. In the Laplace transform, you have a change of domain from t to s, whereas in the Fourier transform, you have a change of domain from t to omega. Whereas with this transform that we have seen, that is a Hilbert transform, there is no change in the domain. So the Hilbert transform stays in the time domain. So the input signal x of t has got a Hilbert transform represented as y of t. So there is no change of domain. So the Hilbert transformer is a system which has got an impulse response given by 1 by pi t and a frequency response given by minus j signum of omega. Okay, so now what we'll do is we will illustrate the 90-degree lag of the Hilbert transformer with this example of x of t is equal to cos omega naught t. So what should you get? If you delay cos omega naught t by 90 degree, so that is cos omega naught t minus pi by 2 radian, that you will get a sin omega naught t. So now we are going to prove that the Hilbert transform of cos omega naught t will be equal to sin omega naught t. So that is very easily done in the frequency domain. Cos omega naught t has got a Fourier transform given by pi delta omega minus omega naught plus delta omega plus omega naught. So this is in fact derived from the fact that e raised to j omega naught t has got a Fourier transform given by 2 pi delta omega minus omega naught, right? So cos omega naught t is therefore e raised to j omega naught t plus e raised to minus j omega naught t by 2. So cos omega naught t will have a Fourier transform given by delta omega minus omega naught plus delta omega plus omega naught. Now, if you take the Hilbert transform, in the frequency domain you can write sorry, y of omega is equal to minus j signum of omega. So that's the frequency response of the Hilbert transformer multiplied by the input spectrum, which is pi delta omega minus omega naught plus delta omega plus omega naught. Now I will expand this and write this as minus j pi delta omega minus omega naught plus j pi delta omega plus omega naught, which is the Fourier transform of sin omega naught t. Okay, so that I have shown here. Sin omega naught t can be expressed like this, and the Fourier transform sin omega naught t will simplify to this expression. So the Hilbert transform of cos omega naught t is just plain sin omega naught t. What we have done is cos omega naught t has been delayed in the phase by pi by 2 radian, right? Very easily observed by noting that cos omega naught t minus pi by 2 radian is equal to sin omega naught t. So we have now talked about a new transform which is known as a Hilbert transform. Unlike the other transforms that we have studied now, the Laplace and the Fourier transforms, there is no change of domain for the Hilbert transform. Hilbert transform is an operation that entirely stays in the time domain. So Hilbert transformer is a system that has got a frequency response given by minus j signum of omega and an impulse response given by 1 by pi t. Okay. So there are some people who are waiting to be admitted, so I will just admit them also. Now, when I conduct the class or the next session, I will insist that all the students be ready at least 5 minutes before the schedule of the start. Okay, so anyhow, I will be uploading the video lecture for this session. But since many of you have joined late, you would have missed some initial concepts that would have that would have to be used for solving the later problems also. So from the next session onwards, I will insist that you join at least 5 minutes before I schedule. Okay, so I had scheduled this meeting for 12:35, and now I have people joining as late as 1:15. Okay, so that cannot be permitted for the next session. Okay, so now we will move on to the next question. Now consider a causal continuous linear time invariant system which has got a frequency response given by h of omega is equal to a of omega plus j b of omega, where a of omega and b of omega are the real and imaginary parts of this spectrum. A of omega and b of omega are real functions of omega, and h of omega is equal to a of omega plus j b of omega. H of omega is equal to a of omega plus j b of omega. Now, you have to find out you have to show that the impulse response h of t of the system can be obtained in terms of either a of omega or b of omega. The impulse response h of t of the system can be obtained in terms of either a of omega or b of omega, right? So normally, you know that h of omega and h of t form a Fourier transform pair. H of t is your impulse response, h of omega is your frequency response. The impulse response and the frequency response form a Fourier transform pair. Now, what we are saying here is that if you have a causal continuous LTI system, causal continuous linear time invariant system, for which you can represent the frequency response h of omega is equal to a of omega plus j b of omega, where a of omega and b of omega are real functions of omega, then you can find out the impulse response of the system if you are given just a of omega alone or b of omega alone. So from a of omega, you can find h of t. You can also find h of t if you are given only b of omega. So that is to be proved now. So this will use the Hilbert transform expression that we have discussed in the just previous problem. Now, you know that the system is causal. So since the system is causal, h of t is equal to 0 for t less than 0, and h of t, h of minus t therefore is equal to 0 for t greater than 0. So h of t is equal to 0 for t less than 0 since the system is causal. So which will mean that h of minus t is equal to 0 for t greater than 0, right? So now you can write the even and odd components of h of t as equal to h e of t plus h o of t. H e of t is the even component of h of t. So h e of t being even will mean that if you write h e of minus t, that will be the same as h e of t. So which means it's an even function of time. So h e of t is an even function. And h o of t is an odd function, which will mean that h o of minus t is equal to minus h o of t. So which means that's an odd function. So every function can be split into an even component plus an odd component, where the even component h e of t can be written as h of t plus h of minus t by 2. So you can very easily verify that this is even. You put t equal to minus t, so this becomes h of minus t plus h of minus t becomes h of t. So h of minus t plus h of t by 2 is the even component of h of t, right? H e of t is an even component of h e of t is the even component of h of t. And likewise, you can write the odd component as h of t minus h of minus t by 2. So that's also easily verified. Now, you also have this important Fourier transformation relationship, which is h e of t is Fourier transformable to the real part of h of omega, and h of t is Fourier transform to j into imaginary part of h of omega. So that result we already have derived while discussing the properties of Fourier transforms. So He of t is Fourier transform to real part of h of omega, which is a of omega, and h of t is Fourier transform to j into imaginary part of h of omega, which is j into b of omega, right? Now, we have this relationship h of t is equal to h of t plus h of t. H of t plus h of t, where h of t is equal to h of t plus h of minus t by 2. So let us consider t greater than 0. So you have this expression h of minus t is equal to 0 for t greater than 0, since h of t was positive. So which means h of t is equal to h of t by 2 for t greater than 0, or we can write h of t is equal to 2 into h of t for t greater than 0. The same argument can be extended to the odd component, and you can write h of t is equal to 2h of t for t greater than 0. Is that clear? And you also have this relation. H of t has got a Fourier transform given by the real part of h of omega, and h of t has got a Fourier transform given by j into imaginary part of h of omega. So which are respectively a of omega and j b of omega respectively. So therefore we can write h of t is equal to 2 h of t is equal to 2 into Fourier inverse of a of omega for t greater than 0, and it's equal to 2 into Fourier inverse of j b of omega for t greater than 0. Is that clear? Okay, so which means that you can compute h of t if you are given only a of omega and b of omega. So which also means that if you are given a of omega, you can also find out j b of omega. So given, just a second. ദേവി എന്ന് വിളിച്ചിട്ട് ദേവിയോട് നാളെ മറ്റേതൊന്ന് സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ് ബില്ല് അവർ നാളെ തരും. അപ്പൊ അവർ വർക്ക് സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ് പറയണം. എം ബുക്കൊക്കെ നാളെ സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ്. ശരി. So if you are given a of omega, you can find out h of t, or if you are given only b of omega, then also you can find out h of t. Since you have h of t, you find the Fourier transform of h of t, that will give you h of omega. So which will mean that if you are given a of omega, you can find out h of omega. Or if you are given only b of omega, then also you can find out h of omega. So now that is to be discussed in the next problem. Here we will discuss the relationship between the real and imaginary components of h of omega for a causal LTI system. Now, let h of omega is equal to a of omega plus j b of omega. So from the previous result, you have this relation h of t is equal to Fourier transform to a of omega, and h of t is Fourier transform to j b of omega. So also from h of t is equal to h of t plus h of t, and observing that h of t is equal to 0 for t less than 0, we have for t less than 0, h of t is equal to minus h of t. Is that okay? For t less than 0, h of t is equal to minus h of t. Why? Because h of t, which is equal to h of t plus h of t, is equal to 0 for t less than 0. Since our system is a causal LTI system. So the impulse response is equal to 0 for t less than 0. So h of t plus h of t for t less than 0 is equal to 0, which will give you this result. H of t is equal to minus h of t for t less than 0. Now, also from the previous result, you have h of t is equal to h of t for t greater than 0. So you have these two relations. H of t is equal to minus h of t for t less than 0, and h of t is equal to h of t for t greater than 0. Or in other words, h of t is equal to h of t into signum of t. Why? Because signum of t is equal to 1 for t greater than 0, and it's equal to minus 1 for t less than 0. And likewise, you can write h of t is equal to h of t into signum of t. So you have a multiplication relation in the time domain here. H of t is the product of h of t and signum of t, and h of t is the product of h of t and the signum of t. And you also know that the multiplication in the time domain is Fourier transformable to a convolution in the frequency domain. So we'll use the frequency domain convolution relationship and then represent this in the frequency domain. So let us do that now. Now, from A, the corresponding frequency domain relationships may be written, noting that H of t has got a Fourier transform given by A of omega, H of t has got a Fourier transform given by J B of omega, and sigma of t has got a frequency domain representation given by 2 of j omega. So this becomes a convolution now. So A of omega is therefore the convolution expression for H of t is equal to H of t into sigma of omega, sigma of t. So which you can write as A of omega is equal to 1 by 2 pi j b of omega convolved with the 1 2 by j omega. And the second expression j b of omega is equal to 1 by 2 pi A of omega convolved with the 2 by j omega. So you will label this as equation B1 and B2. So simplifying B1, you will get A of omega is equal to 1 by pi B of omega convolved with the 1 by pi. So this 2 and this 2 will cancel. This j and this j will cancel. So A of omega is equal to 1 by pi B of omega convolved with the 1 by omega, which you can write as 1 by omega integral minus infinity to plus infinity b lambda by omega minus lambda d lambda. So this expression is very familiar. This is nothing but the Hilbert transform of A of omega. Hilbert transform of B of omega. So A of omega is nothing but the Hilbert transform of B of omega. Likewise, you can simplify B2 and you can write this expression JB of omega is equal to minus J by pi A of omega convolved with 1 by omega, which you can simplify as B of omega is equal to minus 1 by pi integral minus infinity to plus infinity A lambda by omega minus lambda d lambda. So which is nothing but the Hilbert transform of A of omega. So B of omega is minus or negative Hilbert transform of A of omega. So that is concluded here. A of omega is the Hilbert transform of B of omega, and the B of omega is the negative Hilbert transform of A of omega. Okay. Now we will use this result to solve the next question. The real part of the frequency response of a causal LTI system is pi delta omega. So you are given A of omega as equal to pi delta omega. You are asked to find out H of omega and H of t. Find out H of omega and H of t. So you know that A of omega is equal to pi delta omega. Therefore, B of omega is equal to minus 1 by pi, my integral minus infinity to plus infinity, A lambda by omega minus lambda d lambda, which you can write as minus 1 by pi, integral minus infinity to plus infinity, pi delta of lambda by omega minus lambda d lambda. So this now becomes, so I will cancel this pi, and this now becomes minus integral minus infinity minus integral minus infinity plus infinity delta lambda into 1 by omega minus lambda d lambda. So now we can apply the shifting property of the impulse function. So you have this representation here, f of lambda into delta of lambda is equal to f of 0 into delta of lambda. So therefore this becomes delta of lambda into this evaluated at lambda equal to 0. So that is just 1 by omega. And I can take this 1 by omega outside because it's an integral with respect to lambda. So this becomes minus 1 by omega integral minus infinity to plus infinity delta lambda d lambda, which is equal to minus 1 by omega. Okay. Is that clear? So B of omega was equal to minus 1 by omega. A of omega was equal to pi delta omega. So that's easily proven. So which means you can write H of omega is equal to A of omega plus J into B of omega, which you can write as pi delta omega minus J by omega. I will write this as minus J by omega. I will write as 1 by minus J. Minus J is equal to 1 by minus J. So this becomes pi delta omega plus 1 by J omega. Now what will be the impulse response therefore? This is the Fourier transform of a unit step function. So the impulse response h of t is equal to u of t. Okay. So for the case where a of omega, that's a real part of the frequency response, was equal to pi delta omega, and assuming that the system was a linear time invariant causal system, then you have h of t is equal to u of t. So that's our result. Now, we now move on to a different class of problems. So I think now we can admit the others also. Okay, so this section can be followed by everyone. I hope, I sincerely hope, because there is no reference to Hilbert transforms from now onwards. So we have done some questions based on the Hilbert transforms. Now we will move on to a different kind of we will now move on to a different kind of problem where we will discuss the computation of impulse responses for ideal low pass filters, and then we will also discuss the impulse response for the ideal band pass filter, and then we will move on to some non-ideal filters. Okay, so we had discussed the frequency response of the ideal low pass filter previously. This is the frequency response of the ideal low pass filter. Ideal low pass filter has got a cutoff frequency given by omega c. So it's a brick wall response from minus omega c to plus omega c, and the phase response is linear and passing through the origin with a negative slope of Td. So Td is the time delay. So which means that if you have any signal with the frequencies in the range minus omega c to plus omega c as the input, then you will get the same signal at the output, except that that signal will be delayed by Td. Okay. So the ideal low pass filter will pass all frequencies in the pass band without any distortion. The signal will be delayed by a time given by Td. So that's why the slope of this phase response is Td. Now we call this as your rectangular function or the gating function. So now we already had discussed the Fourier inverse of a function in the frequency domain like this. So we had discussed the Fourier inverse of a function in the frequency domain, where the frequency domain representation was a rectangular function in the frequency domain. So what I will do is I will derive that result once again using the duality theorem. So you have already this result. R2t of t, R2t of t is this function in the time domain. This equal as the gating pulse or the rectangular function in the time domain. In the time domain, the duration is from minus t to plus t, the value is equal to 1. In the frequency domain, you had seen that its Fourier transform is the sinc function, the classical sinc function that you had seen. You had also seen that the sinc function has also a very similar expression called the sampling function. The only difference between the sampling function and the sinc function is that sampling function of s of x, sa of x, you write as equal to sine x by x. Okay, so sa of x is equal to sine x by x. Whereas the sinc function, sinc of x, you write as sine pi x by pi x. So that's the only difference between these two functions. They have the same shape. They have an oscillatory shape. So you have a peak, you have a main lobe, and then you have several smaller side lobes, and gradually decreasing to 0 at plus or minus infinity. So that's your sampling function or sinc function. And this sampling function or sinc function assumes very great significance when we discuss the sampling theorem, and specifically when we see the reconstruction of signals from samples of a signal. So we will discuss that later here. So this sampling function and sinc function is very important. The sampling function is also known as the ideal interpolating function. We will discuss all that later. So you have this result, this rectangular function, the time domain R2t of t is having a frequency domain representation or having a spectrum given by 2t sine omega t by omega t, 2t sine omega t by omega t. So sine omega t by omega t you can write as SA of omega t. SA of omega t is the sampling function in the time domain. So 2t SA of omega t. So this, instead of this capital T, you should be writing small t. 2t omega small t by omega. Sorry, this is capital T. 2t sine omega t by omega t. 2t sine omega capital T by omega t, where omega is your frequency domain variable. So this you can write as 2t SA of omega t. Now from duality, if you have this function in the frequency domain, so minus omega c to plus omega c, then its frequency response, so its impulse response, or rather its time domain signal is this function. So we'll derive that here using duality. So using duality, you will consider this function the time domain. So 2t sine capital T into, instead of omega, we'll write small t by capital T into small t. So this is capital F of t, having a Fourier transform given by 2 pi small f of minus omega. So that is 2 pi r2t of minus omega, which is same as r2t of omega. So 2 pi r2t of omega. So 2t sine capital T into t by capital T into t has got a Fourier transform given by 2 pi r2t of omega. Okay. So we'll cancel the similar terms on both sides. First by replacing capital T by omega c, because now this is a rectangular function with the width equal to 2 omega c. So now instead of capital T, we'll write omega c. So this is 2 omega c sine omega c into t by omega c into t has got a Fourier transform given by 2 pi r, instead of 2t, we'll write 2 omega c of omega. So simplifying, you will write sine omega c t by pi t has got this rectangular spectrum, rectangular function as its spectrum. So this function is sine omega c by omega ct by pi t. So what is its peak value at, which is at t equal to 0? You can apply L'Hospital's rule to find the value at t equal to 0. So sine omega c into t by pi t at t equal to 0 can be verified by using the L'Hospital's rule. So applying the L'Hospital's rule, taking the derivative of the numerator, it becomes omega c cos omega c t by pi. So put t equal to 0, so cos omega c t becomes equal to 1. So numerator becomes omega c by pi. So the numerator is just omega c by pi. There is no radian here. This is just omega c by pi. Omega c by pi. Numerator is omega c by pi. So the peak value is omega c by pi, and it oscillates, and the amplitudes of the side lobes decrease as you move from the origin to plus infinity and to minus infinity. Okay. So what does it mean? For this function, the impulse response in the time is sine omega ct by pi t. Now for the ideal low pass filter, you also have to factor in the linear phase response. So what will the linear phase response create? Will produce? Will introduce the linear phase response will introduce a linear phase response will introduce a time delay of TD. Time delay of TD. The shape of the signal, if the signal totally lies in the pass band, will not be distorted, right? The shape of the signal, if the signal lies totally in the pass band, will not be distorted. So therefore, what will happen? This was sine omega ct by pi t. Now that will be delayed by td. So h of t is sine omega c t minus td by pi t minus td, accounting for the phase spectrum which causes a phase delay of td. right? So the impulse response of the ideal low pass filter is now sine omega c t minus td by pi t minus td. Okay. So now we will use this to find out the output of a low pass filter as follows. Consider this ideal for a particular input given by sine at by pi t. So now consider that the ideal low pass filter with a zero phase response. Zero phase response will mean that there is no time delay. So which will mean that the phase response will be along the x-axis. Or you can also say that the slope of this line is equal to 0. Or the delay introduced is equal to 0. So TD equal to 0, which will mean that the slope of this line is equal to 0. Or in other words, this line is along the x-axis. So there is no time delay therefore. So that equal as a zero phase response. So consider an ideal low pass filter with a zero phase response. That is no delay. So that is equal to 1, h of omega equal to 1 for mod omega less than omega c and h of omega equal to 0 for mod omega greater than omega c. Assume that the input to this filter is sine at by pi t. Sine at by pi t. Now find the output when a is less than omega c. That is case 1. Find the output when a is less than omega c. Case B is find the output when a is greater than omega c. I have digitized this page wrongly. So I had to type in the values here. So B is a greater than omega c. Find the output when a is less than omega c. B is when a is greater than omega c. And the C part of the question is in which case you have a distortion in y, right? So you have an ideal low pass filter. Omega c is the cutoff frequency. There is no time delay. So that is why you call this as the ideal low pass filter with a zero phase response. Now the input to the filter is sine at by pi t. And you have two cases where the first case is when a is less than omega c. And the second case is when, sorry, the first case is when a is less than omega c. And the second case is when a is greater than omega c. And in the C part, you are asked to find out in which case you have this distortion in y of t. So now this is very easily solved in the frequency domain. This is now very easily solved in the frequency domain. A is less than omega c will mean that x of t is equal to sine at by x of t is equal to sine at by pi t. So you can now plot the frequency response. Sorry, you can now plot the frequency spectrum of x of t. So this is x of t sine at by pi t. We'll have a spectrum or the Fourier transform given by R2a of omega, which we already have seen. So R2a of omega can be written as minus a2 plus a, the value is equal to 1, and it's equal to 0 also. Whereas the second is h of t is equal to sine omega ct by pi t. The spectrum is h of omega is equal to R2 omega c of omega, which is the frequency response of the system. So you have omega c greater than a. Omega c is greater than a. So the signal spectrum is from minus a to a. The frequency response of the system is from minus omega c to plus omega c. What does it mean? This ideal low pass filter passes all frequencies from 0 to omega c or minus omega c to omega c. So minus a is less than minus omega c. So minus a is between minus omega c and 0, and a is between 0 and omega c. So a is less than omega c, and minus a, the absolute value is a, which is less than omega c. So minus a will be somewhere here, plus a will be somewhere here. So which means this signal is completely passed without any distortion. So therefore, x of omega into h of omega is simply equal to x of omega, right? And outside this, it's multiplied by 0. So inside this region, it's multiplied by 1. So x of omega and h of omega is equal to x of omega, which means y of omega is equal to x of omega, or y of t is equal to x of t is equal to sine at by pi t. Sine at by pi t. So y of t is equal to x of t is equal to sine at by pi t. So there is absolutely no distortion. The signal is passed as such. Now, in the second case, if A is greater than omega c, if A is greater than omega c, then this width will be greater than this width. So, which means if you compute x of omega and h of omega, you will get to the h of omega, right? X of omega into h of omega is equal to h of omega now. So, the second case, you see that y of omega is equal to x of omega and h of omega is equal to h of omega. Why? Because A is now greater than omega c. If you take the product, you will get this as equal to h of omega. So you can just draw the two functions and just verify. It's very easy to verify. So y of omega is equal to h of omega. So therefore y of t is equal to h of t, which is equal to sine omega ct by pi t. So when the input was sine at by pi t, you have the output was sine omega ct by pi t. So which means the output is now distorted. So in the case B, the output is distorted. Anyhow, it's very obvious that since the signal has got a frequency, has got frequency components that do not lie in the passband. The signal has frequency components that do not lie in the passband. So therefore, you have a distortion for case B. Is that clear? Now we move on to the next question. I think there are two more questions to be discussed. The first is to find out the impulse response of the ideal band pass filter. It's done likewise. It is similar to the case where you derive the impulse response of the ideal low pass filter. The ideal band pass filter is shown here like this, consisting of a magnitude response or a gain here and a phase response here. The magnitude response, this is that of an ideal band pass filter. So the pass band is from omega c1 to omega c2. And here minus omega c2 to minus omega c1. So all frequencies in the pass band are passed. So this is the band. Omega c1 to omega c2 is your band. So this is the pass band. This is the pass band. Outside this, you have the stop band. So you have a lower stop band and an upper stop band that extends to infinity, right? So there is a pass band from omega c1 to omega c2, and you require a linear phase response in the pass band. So the phase response is linear in the pass band. So which I had drawn by just drawing a line through the origin with a slope TD, and the phase response is the region is irrelevant. You only need to look at the phase response in the pass band. Now, I had discussed this problem earlier as a solved problem of Fourier transforms for the EC4B batch. What I'll do is I will discuss that here once again for the benefit of EC4A also. Now, consider a signal S of t like this, A1 to A2. This is minus A1 to minus A2, consisting of two shifted pulses. You have a pulse that is shifted to the right and a pulse that is shifted to the left. Okay. So you have a combination of a causal part and an anti-causal part. So this signal is a non-causal signal. The causal part is from A1 to A2. It's equal to 1 from A1 to A2. And the anti-causal part is equal to 1 from minus A1 to minus A2 to minus A1. So what we'll do is, we will represent A2 minus A1 as equal to A. So we will call this as A2 minus A1 as A. And then consider this function, x of t, extending from minus A by 2 to plus A by 2. So this function was shifted to the left to get this part, and this function was shifted to the right to get this part, and this function was shifted to the left to get this part. Okay. So you move this to the right by some time to get this, and you move this to the left by some time to get this part. So therefore, S of t you can now write as S of t you can now write as consisting of two shifted pulses. They show two shifted pulses. S of t can be written as x of t minus a1 plus a2 by 2 plus x of t plus a1 plus a2 by 2. So this is your causal part. X of t minus a1 plus a2 by 2, a1 plus a2 by 2. We'll shift this here. Okay. You can very easily verify that this is a1 plus a2 by 2. So you have to shift by a1 plus a2 by 2 to get the causal part of this function. And this is shifted by a1 plus a2 by 2 in the negative direction to get the anti-causal part. So I will call a1 plus a2 as equal to b to simplify our expressions. So s of t is equal to therefore x of t minus b by 2 plus x of t plus b by 2. And you also have this relation x of t is Fourier transformable to this sampling function, that is a sine omega a by 2 by omega a by 2. And since you have a shifting in the time domain, you apply the time shifting property, and therefore you can write this as x of omega into, for the shifting in the positive direction, this becomes a delay. So the x of omega into e raised to minus omega b by 2 plus this part becomes x of omega into e raised to j omega b by 2. So we can combine these two and write this as 2x of omega into cos omega b by 2. And now I will substitute back what is x of omega. X of omega is a sine omega a by 2 by omega a by 2. So this is 2 into a into sine omega a by 2 by omega a by 2 into cos omega b by 2. So this is the Fourier transform of s of t. What is s of t? Where s of t consists of these two functions. Now what we'll do is, now we will apply the duality theorem. So applying the duality theorem, you consider this function in the time domain. You will consider this function in the time domain. So 2a sine, instead of omega I will put t. So 2a sine t into a by 2 by t into a by 2 into cos, instead of omega I will put t. So cos to t into b by 2 is Fourier transform to, as per duality, 2 pi into s of minus omega. So what is s of minus omega? S of minus omega was this function. S of t was this function. S of minus omega replace t by omega, and then you do a mirror reflection about the j omega axis. Sorry, mirror reflection about the y axis. So that will result in the same function because it's an even function. Okay, so since this is an even function, now you can write 2a sine ta by 2 by ta by 2 into cos tb by 2 is Fourier transform 2 pi into s of minus omega, which is equal to 2 pi into s of omega. So now we will replace a by our frequency domain values. A was equal to omega c2 minus omega c1. In frequency domain, a would have been omega c2 minus omega c1. Instead of a2 minus a1, I will write this as omega c2 minus omega c1. And b, I would have written as omega c2 plus omega c1 by 2. Instead of a1 plus a2 by 2, I will write this as omega c2 plus omega c1 by 2. This now I will represent as 2 into, instead of a, this becomes omega c2 minus omega c1 into sine. Instead of t, I will write omega c2 minus omega c1 by 2 into t into, instead of t I will write, instead of b I will write cos omega c2 plus omega c1 by 2 into t would be Fourier transform to 2 pi into s of omega. Now we will put omega c2 minus omega c1. What is omega c2 minus omega c1? Omega c2 is the upper cutoff frequency. Omega c1 is the lower cutoff frequency. So this I can call as the bandwidth of my ideal bandpass filter. I will call this as the bandwidth of the ideal bandpass filter. This is an absolute bandwidth. Absolute bandwidth in the sense you don't have any half power points here. So omega c2 is the pass band edge as well as the stop band edge, which will mean that any frequency above omega C2 will be in the stop band, and any frequency below omega C2 but greater than omega C1 will be in the pass band. Okay, so omega C2 is a demarcating frequency. So omega C2 minus omega C1 is known as the absolute bandwidth of the ideal band pass filter. For ideal filters, you have what is known as the absolute bandwidth. So absolute bandwidth of the ideal band pass filter we will represent as capital B. So this now simplifies to 2b sine b into t by 2 by b into t by 2 into cos omega C2 plus omega C1 by 2 into t, which is Fourier transform to 2 pi s of minus omega. Now, you also need to consider the linear phase response leading to a time delay Td. So therefore, what would be the impulse response? So this you can now simplify 2b sine bt by t, etc. You can now simplify and write what is the expression for s of omega. I can cancel 2 and 2 both sides, and I can include this pi. I can divide this by pi. So this becomes b by pi sine bt by 2 by bt by 2 into cos omega c2 plus omega c1 by 2 into t. On the right hand side, I just have s of omega. Now, in addition to this s of omega, I also have to consider this linear phase response. So that will result in a shifting of the impulse response in the time domain by t. So h of t now becomes b by pi sine b into, instead of t, I'll write t minus td by 2 by b into, instead of t, I'll write t minus td by 2 into cos omega c2 plus omega c1 by 2 into, instead of t, I'll write t minus td. So this is the impulse response of the ideal band pass filter that we had seen. Impulse response of the ideal band pass filter that we had seen. For these kind of ideal filters, you refer to this bandwidth as the absolute bandwidth. Absolute bandwidth. Absolute bandwidth can be used to represent filters that have a brick wall response. Why we call this as a brick wall response is brick wall response. Why we call this as a brick wall response is because you have a brick wall. You can assume that you have a brick wall here, a wall. It's constructed here. So here also you have a wall. So these are brick wall responses. Brick wall responses. Okay. So these are ideal filters. For ideal filters, you have what is known as the absolute bandwidth. Whereas for the practical filters, you have different definitions for bandwidth. Whereas the most popular definition for bandwidth is what we are familiar with, which is a 3 dB bandwidth. So 3 dB bandwidth is also known as the half power bandwidth. Okay, so that we'll discuss now shortly. Now we move on to practical filters. So we have completed the discussions on ideal filters, and now we move on to practical filters, which are the non-ideal filters, non-ideal linear time invariant filters. So for practical filters, there is no brick wall response, which means there is no infinite roll-off. You have discussed roll-off in analog integrated circuit. For your Butterworth filters, you have a roll-off 20 dB per decade per order. So for the first order, you have this 20 dB per decade, and for the second order, you have 40 dB per decade. So which means the roll-off will mean that the transition from the pass band to the stop band is much faster in the frequency. So when the roll-off is infinity, you get the brick wall response. So no brick wall response, which means that there is no infinite roll-off. Likewise, for these non-ideal filters, you cannot have a flat pass band and the flat stop band. So for these practical filters, you cannot have a flat pass band, you cannot have flat stop band, you cannot also have infinite roll-off. So these are your practical filters. So now let us consider two examples here. I will discuss two examples. One is the first order low pass filter, and the second is the first order high pass filter. The first order low pass filter is shown here, which is just this RC circuit. So consider the RC circuit in the figure. Find and plot the magnitude and phase response. And you can assume that there is no initial capacitor charge. So the initial zero conditions are applicable here. We have zero initial conditions, which means you do not need to apply your unilateral Laplace transforms if you are using Laplace. So you don't have any initial conditions. So consider the RC circuit, find and plot the magnitude and the phase response. There is no initial capacitor charge. Okay, so this is very easily proved. The current through the circuit, you can write this as current through the capacitor is equal to C into d by t by dt. Now we'll apply Kirchhoff's voltage law. So R into I of t plus y of t, R into I of t plus this y of t is equal to x of t. So R into I of t is C into dy t by dt plus y of t is equal to x of t. Since I have chosen to solve this using Fourier transform, I could have very easily done this using Laplace transforms as well. So here I have chosen to solve this using Fourier transform. So RC into d by t by dt plus y of t is equal to x of t. We take Fourier transform throughout. This should be RC into j omega y of omega plus y of omega is equal to x of omega. Solving you get h of omega is equal to y of omega by x of omega is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega RC. 1 by 1 plus j omega RC. Right? H of omega is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega RC. So that is your frequency response. Now, I will represent this frequency response in a simplified manner by representing 1 by RC is equal to omega 0. So we'll call this as omega 0. 1 by RC is equal to omega 0. So which means h of omega is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega by omega 0. 1 by 1 plus j omega by omega 0. Okay. Right? And modulus of h of omega would be therefore equal to, that's the magnitude response or the gain of the filter would be equal to 1 by root of 1 plus omega by omega 0 the whole square. 1 by root of 1 plus omega by omega 0 the whole square. And the phase response theta h of omega would be equal to, since this is in the denominator, the phase response is equal to minus tan inverse omega by omega 0. Okay. Sorry. Now, at omega equal to omega 0, what is the gain? If you put omega equal to omega 0, at the frequency omega equal to omega 0 equal to 1 by RC, what would be the gain? That would be equal to 1 by root of 1 plus 1 the whole square, which is equal to 1 plus 1 by root of 1 plus 1, which is equal to 1 by root 2. So which means at omega equal to 0, the gain modulus of h of omega is equal to 1 by root 2. Okay. Or which also means that modulus of h of omega the whole square is equal to 1 by 2, which is called as the power gain. So power gain is equal to 1 by 2. Power gain is equal to 1 by 2 at omega equal to omega 0. So this point omega equal to omega 0 equal as the half power point. Omega equal to omega 0 equal as the half power point. Okay. So the gain is equal to 1 by root 2. The power gain is equal to 1 by 2. So therefore these frequencies omega 0 is called as the half power point. And the bandwidth is the range from 0 to omega 0. Bandwidth is from 0 to omega 0. This is for your band pass filter, low pass filter, practical low pass filter. Okay, so if you plot 1 by root of 1 plus omega by omega 0 the whole square, you will get a spectrum like this. Okay, this is the spectrum. At omega equal to omega 0, modulus of h of omega is equal to 1 by root 2, which means theta h of omega is equal to minus tan inverse 1, which is equal to minus pi by 4 and plus pi by 4, which is equal to minus pi by 4 and plus pi by 4. Theta h of omega is equal to minus pi by 4 and plus pi by 4 at the at the half power points, and theta h of omega approaches minus pi by 2 radian at plus infinity and plus pi by 2 radian at minus infinity, which is easily verified. When omega becomes equal to infinity, this becomes minus tan inverse infinity, which is equal to minus pi by 2 radian. Likewise, this becomes plus pi by 2 radian here. Now, therefore, plus or minus omega 0 is called as the half power point, and 0 to omega 0 is the half power bandwidth. This is the most popularly used notation for bandwidth. I can have different representation for the bandwidth. Like for example, instead of this half power point, I can consider the range of frequencies which have up to 90% of the maximum power. So that is another way to define bandwidth. But this is the most commonly used notation for bandwidth. We will call this as a 3 dB bandwidth or the half power bandwidth. Okay, right. So that's for the. You see that this is a low pass filter, right? This is a practical low pass filter. It's a first order low pass filter. In fact, this is the first order Butterworth filter that you had already seen in analog integrated circuit. If you had an active circuit, if you had an operation amplifier, this would have been your first order Butterworth filter that you had studied in analog integrated circuit. Okay. Now, we'll look at the second example. Now, the positions of the capacitor and the resistance have been interchanged. So, this is the RC circuit. Assume zero initial conditions. Find the magnitude and the phase response of this system. Now, we have for this system, I of t is equal to y of t by r. The current through the circuit is y of t by r. I of t is equal to y of t by r. So, if you apply Kirchhoff's voltage law, you can write x of t is equal to 1 by c integral minus infinity to t I of tau d tau plus y of t. So now since you have zero initial conditions, you don't have to write this minus infinity to t. Instead of that, you can just write integral 0 to t. So x of t is equal to 1 by c integral 0 to t I of tau d tau plus y of t. So which means you can write x of t is equal to 1 by rc integral 0 to t y of tau d tau plus y of t. So you take derivative throughout, you can write d by dt of x of t is equal to y of t by rc plus d by dt of y of t. So this becomes a first order differential equation. If you take the Fourier transform throughout, you can write j omega into x of omega is equal to 1 by rc into y of omega plus j omega into y of omega. Solving, you can write h of omega is equal to j omega by j omega plus 1 by rc. Divide throughout by j omega. So this becomes 1 by 1 plus 1 by j omega rc. Now, as before, if you put rc is equal to omega 0, now this becomes h of omega is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega 0 by omega. Earlier for the practical low pass filter, it was 1 by 1 plus j omega by omega 0. Now it's 1 by 1 plus j omega 0 by omega. So as before, you see that this magnitude response of the gain is equal to 1 by root of 1 plus omega 0 by omega the whole square, and theta h of omega is equal to minus tan inverse omega 0 by omega. Okay. Okay. Now we will plot the magnitude and the phase response. If we plot the magnitude response, it's like this. Peak value is equal to 1. The peak value is equal to 1, and the value at omega equal to 0 is equal to 0. And the value at omega equal to omega 0 is equal to 1 by root 2. So these are as for the half power points or the 3 dB bandwidth points, because if you take the gain in the decibel scale, then this would be 3 decibel down from the maximum value. The maximum value being 0 dB, because the logarithm of 1 is equal to 0. The gain would be 3 dB down from the peak value. And the phase response, to plot the phase response, you have to note that there is a convention that is commonly followed. The convention that is commonly followed is that for omega equal to, we have a monotonically decreasing phase response. That is the conventional phase response that is usually drawn. Now let us look at the frequencies. For at omega equal to omega 0, theta h of omega is equal to pi by 4 radian. So at omega equal to omega 0, theta h of omega is equal to, I should have written this as minus pi by 4 radian. And at omega equal to 0, theta h of omega is equal to pi by 2. And at omega equal to infinity, theta h of omega equal to 0 radian. So these are the value that we get. Omega equal to omega 0, theta h is equal to pi by 4 radian. At omega equal to 0, theta h is equal to pi by 2 radian. And at omega equal to infinity, you have theta h is equal to 0 radian. Now, since the convention is to have a monotonically decreasing phase response, which means that the phase response should decrease from the left to the right. So that's the convention. Whereas if you draw this, the phase response would not be monotonically decreasing. So that's very easily proved by noting that. So if you have pi by, say for example, if you have pi by 2 radian, minus pi by 2 radian is same as minus 3 pi by 2 radian, right? You can see minus 5 plus pi by 2 radian minus pi by plus pi by 2 radian is same as minus 3 pi by 2 radian. So likewise, you can look at the angles and then try to draw a monotonically decreasing phase response. So this I am going to leave to you as a homework. Okay, the phase response. To draw the phase response, you really have to note that at omega equal to omega 0, theta h of omega is equal to minus pi by 4 radian. And at omega equal to 0, theta h of omega is equal to plus pi by 2 radian. And at omega equal to infinity, theta h of omega is equal to 0 radian. So you can maybe draw this, but the usual convention is to draw this as a monotonically decreasing phase response. So you draw a monotonically decreasing phase response by noting that pi by 2 radian is the rotation of the phasor in the anti-clockwise direction by 90 degree. So that is the rotation of the phasor in the clockwise direction from 0 to 270 degrees. So minus 270 degree minus 270 degrees is the same as 90 degree. Likewise, you can look at the other frequencies as well. Okay, so that way you can draw the phase response. Now this is the last question. So we'll apply the result that we have derived earlier to find out the response of the first order low pass filter to the input except is equal to delta t. Okay, so for this h of omega, you know that h of omega is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega by omega 0. The corresponding system function or transfer function is h of s is equal to 1 by 1 plus s by omega 0. Okay. Now, x of omega is the Fourier transform of delta t, which is equal to 1. So therefore, y of omega is equal to x of omega into h of omega, which is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega by omega 0, which you can write as omega 0 by omega 0 plus j omega. The corresponding y of s is just omega 0 by s plus omega 0. So therefore, the inverse Fourier transform of this or the inverse Laplace transform of this can be written as the expression for the output y of t. So y of t is just omega 0 into e raised to minus omega 0 t into u of t. Okay. Now, likewise, the impulse response of the first order high pass filter can be calculated. Note that h of omega is equal to 1 by 1 plus j omega naught by omega. So now see that there is a very interesting way in which you can calculate the impulse response of the high pass filter. So for that, what you have to do is look at this frequency response and try to relate that to this frequency response. Okay, so this value is equal to 1. So you see that if you subtract from 1 this value, this frequency response, assuming 0 phase, of course, if you subtract from 1 this frequency response, you can write h of omega for the high pass filter as equal to 1 minus h of omega for the low pass filter. Okay, so that also can be proved otherwise. So you can write from observation that 1 by 1 plus j omega naught by omega is equal to 1 minus 1 by 1 plus j omega by omega naught. So take the inverse Fourier transform of this expression. For this you have delta t. So 1 inverse Fourier transform is delta t, and this part you have already derived. Just now you have derived as omega 0 e raised to minus omega 0 t into u of t. So this is minus omega 0 e raised to minus omega 0 t into u of t. So h of t is equal to delta t minus omega 0 e raised to minus omega 0 t into u of t. Okay. Right. So this is the last session on frequency responsive systems.